Hello everyone and welcome to my channel. In this video we will be working on a very special commission that is very personal to my customer. She shared her story with me because it influences this and another doll she would like to commission in the future, and she gave me permission to share this story with you also. The girl's name is Cam and she has a condition called ALS. It's a disease that stops sending signals between the brain and the muscles and specific organs like the lungs, heart and eyes. Right now she has trouble speaking and her arms and legs don't work, so she is in a wheelchair. But like every little girl, she always dreamed of her wedding. She says, "I dreamed of a fairy tale and even planned what I'd want for some things. In alternative reality, I get the fairy tale wedding of my dreams and someone I love." So, with her first commission, we are going to try bring her dream wedding dress concept to life in the form of a doll. In her dream wedding, Cam wanted to feel like a goddess of a water element, so the dress will be heavily inspired by water, ice and snow. As a base doll, I am going to use Apple White, and she and Cam have a lot in common. Both of them have blonde hair and blue eyes, but I'll need to reroute the hair anyway because of the glue factory dolls have inside their heads. Even if I'd managed to clean the hair, the glue would leak back again, and I don't want to have that tacky mess on my dolls. We also settled for a slightly darker shade of blonde hair for her, and here's what I got. Now I need to protect her hair with plastic before we can start working on the face up. Cam would like to go for a classic wedding makeup with an accent on her lips. She would like them to be wine red, and the eye makeup will be natural looking brown eyeshadow with glitter accents. I start off with sketching her eyes with a low pigmented brown pencil because it's easy to erase or even correct after sealing, and then add some natural shadows to the face with light brown pastels. I prefer to take shading slowly and rather add more layers than over blush or get patchy makeup. On the second layer, I started adding more definition and detail to the eyes using a darker pencil with more pigment. I always start a layer with pencils and finish with pastels because with pencils we need to be more precise and they are also harder to erase. So to keep a face up clean, it's best to add pastels last, right before sealing. Cam wished the eyebrows to look natural but not too yellow, so I tested my pencils on paper to see which brown is light enough to fit with blonde hair but doesn't have the yellow shade to it. And again, I start drawing the eyebrows with pencils and then add pastels to deepen the color. Many people do eyebrows the other way around, but I feel like to me it's easier to build the brows hair by hair than starting with the overall shape and then adding details. When we were discussing the base doll, I offered a few options depending on what we are going to focus on. If we focus on the dress, I suggested to use a Barbie because they have bigger bodies, so more details could be added. But if we focus on the face, it's better to choose a Monster High or Ever After High doll. I'm not very confident about my face-up skills, but Cam said she would like to focus on the face and hair because she appreciates the skill and care I put in my face-ups. I was a little bit surprised by this because I think the only thing I'm actually skilled at is sewing, but hearing this motivated me to put even more care into this face-up. So I took it really slow and did my best to make every layer the best I could. So even though the concept of this face up is relatively simple, I made more layers and stretched this work over several days to make sure I always had a fresh vision and mind. And in the end, it paid off with me getting the cleanest and the most polished face up I ever made. And it was all made possible because there was a person who believed in me and trusted my skills. But together with Cam, I'd like to thank every one of you people who follow me on social media and support me with your comments and likes, and especially my Patreons who share every struggle and achievement with me. Thank you all for making me feel appreciated. When I think about it, I feel like face-ups actually are the most important things in dolls, because the first thing we look at is usually their eyes, and it's something that creates our first impression about them. When I look at a doll, I feel like my brain is scanning them more like a little person, trying to figure out what their character and personality is, and only then I can appreciate other details and work that was put into them. The face up is almost done now, and I'm adding the glitter last because the matte sealant will reduce their gloss, and I want to have only one thin layer of it just to fix the glitter in place. And the face up is done. I think she looks like a kind and loving person, but the contrast between the eyes and dark lipstick adds some spice to her overall look. Now I can remove the wrap and remove the sealant from her roots by just scratching it off. And next up is the dress. The bodice, sleeves and collar will be a similar shape to the classic Princess Jasmine outfit, so I start off with changing the basic pattern to a corset with a heart-shaped cleavage. I cut all of the details out of thin satin fabric and sew them together. Cam wanted the bodice to have a beaded embroidery that looks like frost pattern, but even the smallest beads there is would have been too bulky for this scale. So I came up with the idea to cover the bodice with embroidered mesh to build up the pattern first and then add beads around it. Like this, we will be able to get both a very fine frost pattern and gloss from the beads. At first I wanted to cut out the mesh using the same pattern as I used for the corset, but I didn't like how it was cutting into the embroidery, so I decided to cut the lace into fragments and attach them one by one to the bodice using a transparent thread. Like this, the bodice and embroidery will look seamless like one solid piece. I start off with fixing the corset on the doll, and then I'll be sewing the lace onto the bodice while it's on the doll to additionally shape the corset and make the lace pattern complement the shape of the body, like a tattoo basically. I start adding the embroidery from the front because it's the most important part of the dress, and then build the rest around it as if the pattern was spreading from the center to the sides and finally to the back. I left out the overlapping beads for now, and I'll finish them later on after I remove the bodice from the doll. Now I'll move on to adding beads. I have here several shades of transparent glass beads, like glass with white metallic coating, transparent, iridescent, and regular transparent glass, and I'm going to use all of them for different needs. Those beads with special coatings will be used as accents, and transparent beads will be used as a filler around the embroidery to not cover but highlight the pattern. I also decided to add a glass bead with a silver center in the middle of every little swirl to make them pop more. I chose this type of beads because we only can see its center and it feels like the bead is smaller than it actually is. These beads made the swirls pop without dragging all of the attention to themselves. After I was done covering the lace with beads, I removed the bodice from the doll and finished up the back the same way I did the front. Adding all of the embroidery and beads while the bodice was still on the doll shaped the bodice to her body and additionally stabilized it, so now the corset feels a bit like armor. It became so tough. I covered one side with lace completely, and on the other side I left out the part that will be covered with Velcro, because we don't want to have too many unnecessary layers. Next up is the skirt. Cam wanted to have an A-line skirt made of light blue and white layers that would resemble a waterfall. We played around with different designs and decided to settle for a light blue skirt with a layer of white mesh over it. I made the light blue skirt cone-shaped to reduce the puffiness and reduce the material around the waist, and now I will decorate the bottom of the mesh skirt with lace. Well, actually it's not lace, but embroidered mesh, but you get me. I will be doing the same thing I did with the bodice, cut out the embroidered part and sew it to the mesh using a transparent thread to make it look like one piece. We chose this mesh for the skirt because the swirly pattern reminded us of waves and sea foam. And then I also embroidered it with beads, but this time I also added light blue beads to match with the first skirt. They are also transparent, so the light blue won't stand out much, but I think it will add a nice detail to the skirt. I attached both skirts to the bodies, but the skirt felt kinda empty, which I think happened because there was not a smooth transition from the bodies to the light blue skirt. So Cam suggested to take inspiration from Princess Adette's wedding dress and add 2 more layers to the skirt. The challenge that came with this idea is that there would be 4 layers of skirt and 4 layers of the bodice meeting on her waistline and building too much bulk. To solve this problem, I first separated the light blue skirt from the dress and made it into a separate petticoat, so it will be placed lower than the bodice. Then I attached the glittery mesh layer to the white mesh. Without any seam allowances, I kinda blended this layer into the white mesh by stitching them together with a transparent thread right under the bodice, so there is no overlap but also not a visible seam. And for the upper layer, we are going to use thicker fabric, so I could iron all of the seam allowances towards the detail and then stitch it to the bodice like fold to fold, with the seam allowances from the skirt layer looking down, away from the bodice. So in the end, I managed to not only add 2 more layers to the skirt without adding puffiness, but even reduce the bulk by separating the light blue skirt from the dress. I made the collar out of the same fabric I used for the upper layer of the skirt to bring the concept together, but I also feel like the collar needs to be made of thicker fabric than the sleeves. I will be sewing it to the dress while it's on the doll as well, because it needs to be wider than the dress to compensate for the amount of fabric layers and thickness. I finished up the sleeves by gathering them and adding some beads between the folds. I used the same beads with the silver center I used on the bodice and the skirt, so every part of the dress will have a repeating element, and I also feel like it goes nicely with the glitter on the mesh. Next up are her shoes. We agreed to use the shoes from an Ever After High mermaid doll, but Cam wasn't a fan of the tail-shaped heel, so first I tried to carve it to make it look like a regular heel, but it turned out a bit too short because the tail had a little dimple in the middle. So I decided to sculpt the heels instead. I cut off the heels, but not completely. I left a bit of the heel on top so I can drill a hole in it and add a wire armature for the heel. It will make the connection way more stronger than just gluing a heel to the shoe. I covered the armature with epoxy sculpt, and after it cured, I carved it and sanded it. Then I painted the shoes with metallic acrylic paints. For the shells, I decided to use different shades of teal, purple and blue to make single shells stand out more, and at last I topped them with iridescent paint to make the colors look more complex. However, Cam said that the colors are a bit too bright for the dress, which is fair enough, so I toned them down by adding another thin layer of white metallic paint over the shells. Now they look more subtle and match the dress. Next, I need to make hair accessories. The most important element here will be a big water lily, and I decided to try use a medium that's new to me called deep resin to make the flower look like a crystal. I made a wireframe for every petal and then dipped it into resin. This resin will fill up the frame like a soap bubble, and then it can be cured with a UV lamp. When the resin cured, I cut off the extra wire and basically soldered the petals together using the same UV resin. Cam wanted the petals to be white with light blue tips, so I'm going to mix some UV resin with blue dye and paint the petals with a gradient. And instead of using white dye, I decided to use white glitter powder to make the flower extra shiny. I'm adding the petals in layers to make sure I always have free access to paint every one of them. The flower will be attached to the hair with a pin, but the pin doesn't have enough head to be glued to the flower securely. So I cut out a circle out of leather, pierced it with the pin, and then glued this leather to the flower. And our pin is done. Now that we know the size of the main flower, I can move on to the hairstyle. I needed to collect 1/3 of the hair from the top into an updo, and because the nylon hair is very slippery, I wanted to make 2 braids and shape them into a bun, but in this case I would have the ends of the braids sticking out. I wanted to curl them, but I felt like they would still look too abrupt and it won't be possible to blend them nicely with the rest of the curls. So I curled all of the hair and then decided to try and make the updo out of the curls like it's usually done for real people. Nylon is very slippery, so first I covered every curl with styling foam to make the hairs stick together a bit. Then I shaped them into swirls and sewed them with a thread instead of bobby pins. I did most of the work off camera because it was really hard to hold the doll while filming, but I think you still can get the idea. The key is to use a lot of styling product to make the hair less slippery and properly stick together. I placed most of the hair on the right side because all of the flowers will be on the left side. And now I can pin the water lily and then surround it with white roses. A bride also needs a veil. I made it out of mesh and then added a lace trim around its edges with a good old transparent thread to make it look like embroidery. Cam also suggested to add water drops to the skirt and veil. For the drops I used clear UV resin. I especially like how it looks on the skirt. I think it adds a nice gradient from the lace to mesh, and could also be a good alternative to beads. Now that all the elements are ready, we can put everything together. Personally, I'm very happy with how the dress turned out, both design and quality wise. As my friend likes to say, teamwork makes the dream work. I feel honored to be chosen for this project. To me, it was a huge responsibility to work on such a meaningful doll, and I tried to treat it like an actual bride and make sure everything is perfect and at least just as good as Cam imagined it to be. On my end, I was happy to become her hands and bring her idea to life. I am also excited about the next doll idea she would like to commission later on, so we are not telling her goodbye. She definitely will be watching this video and reading your comments, so if you would like to say hello, you can leave your messages in the comments section. If you like this video, don't forget to give it a like. It will be a big help for my channel. And if you would like to support my channel further, you can subscribe to my Patreon for more in-depth content or buy me a coffee. All the links you can find in the description box. Even though I started Patreon now, my giveaway offer for buy me a coffee still stands. For every 100 coffees I reach, I'll make a giveaway and the winner will get a custom doll commission. Each coffee equals 1 entry. Thank you very much for spending your time with me, and I hope to see you soon in my next video. Bye!